Welcome. Over the next 12 weeks, the 12 of us are going to learn a framework called active inference. It is a way of understanding minds, what they are for, how they work, and why they sometimes suffer. It comes most directly from the work of 3 researchers, Carl Friston, Thomas Parr, and Giovanni Picciolo, but it rests on a foundation that is far older. Hermann von Helmholtz in the 1860s, Thomas Bayes a full century before that, David Mack came more recently. When we use this framework, we are standing on a long and serious tradition. You are not learning a fashion, you are learning something that has been built, carefully, for 150 years. Here is my first promise to you. We will not become physicists. We are not here to do mathematics. There will be almost none of it for weeks. And even when it arrives, it will arrive gently, with a picture first and a symbol second, never the other way round. What we are here to do is become people who can think more clearly about minds, including, and I mean this is the real promise of the course, our own. By week 12, you will look at your own attention, your own habits, your own anxieties and comforts, and you will have a genuinely new vocabulary for what you find, not jargon, vocabulary, words that let you see things you could not name before. 2 ground rules, and they hold all term. The first is about pace. If I ever go too fast, that is not your failure. It is information that I need, and I need it in the moment, not in a feedback form 3 weeks later. So say it. Hand. Oh, wait. I say that again. Every one of those is a gift, to me and to everyone else in the room who was too polite to ask. The second rule is about not knowing. In this room, I don't know is a complete sentence. It is not an admission of weakness. It is the actual, literal sound of a mind in the act of learning. I will say it myself before this term is over, more than once, and when I do, I want you to notice something. The room does not end. The ceiling does not fall. We simply think together for a moment. Get comfortable with that sentence. It is the most useful one you own. Here is the shape of our hour, so that you are never sitting there wondering where we are or how much is left. 7 moves. We open with the story circle, and in that one you do most of the thinking, not me. Then 3, actually 4. Examples, where I do most of the talking and you do the watching. Then a thought experiment. Then the single definition that anchors all 12 weeks of this course. The one piece of today you could reasonably call the backbone. Then we will clear away a set of common confusions before they have a chance to take root and quietly distort everything that follows. And we will close every week. This is how we close, with you putting the day's idea into your own words. You do not need to take notes today. I mean that literally, and I want to say why. Note-taking feels productive, but in a session like this one it splits your attention. Half of you is listening, half of you is transcribing, and the transcribing half wins. Everything in this first hour is built to be remembered, not recorded. It is built out of stories and pictures precisely because stories and pictures are what a human mind holds without effort. So if your pen is down and your eyes are up, and you are simply here, you are doing this exactly right. Trust that. So let me give you the one idea, and I want to frame it honestly. Everything else this entire term, every diagram, every workbench lab, every piece of vocabulary, all 12 weeks of it, is unpacking this single sentence. If you left after the next 30 seconds, you would still have the seed of the whole course. Here it is. A mind is not for seeing the world. A mind is for predicting what's about to happen. So the body it lives in can keep existing. Now, I suspect a part of you wants to push back on that, and good. You should. Because we all carry a very different picture of the mind, and we carry it without ever having chosen it. We picture the mind as a kind of camera. The world pours in through the eyes and the ears, and the mind is the screen it gets displayed on. Perception comes first, thinking and acting come after. As a response to the picture, that model feels obvious. It feels like simply what is happening right now as you look around this room. I am going to spend this hour trying to turn that picture around, to convince you that the camera model is not just incomplete, it is backwards, and I will start by handing you, free of charge, 2 cracks in it. Here is the first crack. Right now, you cannot see your own nose. Except you can. It is always there, in the bottom of your visual field, in both eyes. All the time. Your brain simply edits it out, because it predicts the nose perfectly, and a thing that is perfectly predicted carries no news, so it is not shown to you, and it goes further than the nose. You have a literal blind spot in each eye, an actual hole in the retina, where the optic nerve punches through, with no light-sensing cells at all. There is a gap in your vision the size of several full moons, and you have never once noticed it, your whole life, because your mind predicts straight across the hole and paints in what it is confident should be there. And here is the second crack, and I like this one even more. You blink every few seconds, all day, something like 15 to 20,000 times. Each blink shuts the world off for 100 milliseconds or so. That is a strobe light. I writes, your day should look like a film projected through a stutter, on, off, 20,000 times. But it does not. Your experience of the world is seamless, continuous, unbroken. Why? Because your brain is not waiting for the light to tell it what is there. It already has a prediction of what is there, and it simply holds that prediction across the blink. You are not seeing the world. You are seeing your mind's best running prediction of the world, and the prediction is usually so good, so fast, so seamless, that you mistake it for sight itself. That is, in essence, Helmholtz's idea, and he had it in the 1860s. He called it unconscious inference. Underneath every moment of what feels like simply looking, the mind is quietly inferring, guessing, predicting, and showing you the guess. And there is a name for what Helmholtz noticed. A name we will lean on for all 12 weeks. Call it the blindfold. Your mind builds a model of the world, ceaselessly, out of those thin signals, and then it forgets that it built anything at all. The construction hides itself. You do not experience my visual system's best reconstruction of a room. You simply experience a room. The model runs so well, and so silently, that it feels like the world has been handed to you direct, with nothing in between. Here is the sentence to carry out of today. The mind is a map that forgets it is a map, and almost everything we do this term is one slow, careful act, lifting one corner of that blindfold, not tear it off. You could not survive a single day without it, only to see it, finally, for what it is. Next week we name the 2 halves the blindfold hides, the world as it actually happens, and the world as your mind builds it, and we spend the whole hour in the gap between them. One word of care before we go on, because people genuinely trip on it. When I say prediction, all term, I do not mean a guess. A guess is a one-off. You shrug, you pick a number, you move on, and you forget it. A prediction, in the sense we mean it, is nothing like that. It is structural. It runs continuously, whether you attend to it or not, and this is the very heart of it. It is constantly checked against the world and corrected, and guesses fired once into the dark and forgotten. A prediction is a standing commitment that the system keeps testing, every moment, against what actually arrives, and keeps revising. Every single example we look at today is a prediction in that strong, living sense. Hold the distinction. We are going to make all of it solid now, starting, as promised, with you. We are going to begin properly with a story circle. Here is what I would like. I want you to tell me one prediction you made today, out loud, or to yourself, just 1, 2 things about that. First, it can be tiny. It can be utterly, gloriously boring. In fact, the more boring the better. Boring is the entire point, and you will see why in a few minutes. Second, it does not have to be a prediction you noticed yourself making at the time. Almost none of yours you will have noticed. That is not a problem. That is the finding. You are going to reconstruct 1 now. Looking back, let me give you 3. To prime the pump, maybe you predicted your coffee would be hot, and you know that you predicted it, because you blew across the surface before the first sip. Nobody blows on coffee they expect to be cold. The blowing is the prediction, made visible. Maybe you received a short, blunt reply to a message, and you predicted instantly, and with real confidence, that the person was annoyed with you. An entire inference about another human being's hidden inner state, drawn from 4 words on a screen. Or maybe, this is my favourite, you reached for a door handle or a light switch in the dark, and your hand went straight to it, no fumbling, because your body predicted exactly where it would be in space. Take 15 seconds. Find yours. I will wait. Now, here is what you would notice in a full room of people doing this. Nobody is actually stuck. Every person produces a prediction within seconds, and the one person who hesitates produces one by hesitating. That is the first genuine finding of this entire course, and it is worth more than it sounds. A prediction is not rare, and it is not the special talent of clever or attentive people. It is not something a trained mind does and an untrained mind does not. It is utterly ordinary. It is constant. It is the water you have been swimming in so completely, for your whole life, that you had to be explicitly asked before you could see a single drop of it. That is what we are doing this term. We are learning to see the water. And here is the second thing. Look at how the predictions fall into 3 kinds. Predictions about your own body, predictions about other people, predictions about the physical world around you. Your mind is running all 3 of these forecasts, all of the time, in parallel, a rolling forecast of your body, a rolling forecast of the people near you, a rolling forecast of the physical world, and it is stitching all 3 together into the single, smooth, seamless thing that you simply call my morning. And here is something to file away for a later week. Those 3 forecasts can disagree with each other. You can predict your body is safe and simultaneously predict the situation is not. And the feeling of those 2 forecasts grinding against each other has a name we all know. We call it anxiety. We will come back to that, with real tools, much later. For now, just notice the 3 forecasts. Always running, usually agreeing, occasionally not. One last thing in this block, and for this one you are the worker, not me. Take the prediction you found a moment ago, just the one, and pull it apart into 3 layers. What did that one prediction assume about your body? What did it assume about the situation you were in? And what did it assume about other people? Did you feel what that just did? You took one small, ordinary, boring prediction, and the moment you pressed on it, it opened up into a body layer, and a situation layer, and a social layer, all folded so tightly together that you would never, on your own, have prized them apart. That layering is not a special case. That is what every prediction you make is really like underneath a dense, multi-layered, and instant. We have barely touched your actual day, and already the picture is full. Hold that. We are going to give it a backbone now. I'm going to show you a series of things that predict. The slide says 3. I am actually going to give you 4, because the 4th one is the one that matters most, and I did not want you bracing for it. As we go, I want you to watch for one specific thing, and only that thing. These examples could not look more different from one another. Metal, feathers, flesh, and yet underneath, every one of them is doing the exact same move. Watch for the move. The move is the lesson. The examples are just its costumes. First, the simplest predicting thing in the entire world. A thermostat, a small box on a wall. Nothing could be less impressive. And that is exactly why we start here. No, cut the diagram. I want to name its 3 parts deliberately, because these 3 parts are going to come back, by these same names, for the rest of the term. Part 1 of the dial, the setting, that is the thermostat's prediction, or close enough to it for today. Its standing belief about how warm this room is supposed to be. 21 degrees, let us say. Part 2 is the sensor, the blue arrow coming in. The sensor is the thermostat's perception, its one and only channel of contact with what the room is actually doing. Part 3, the heater. The gold arrow going out. The heater is the thermostat's actioner, the one and only thing it can do to change the world. Now watch the loop turn. Slowly. The sensor reports 19 degrees. The dial says 21. There is a gap. A disagreement between the prediction and the world. And here is the first idea I want to plant hard. That gap is not noise. And it is not a malfunction. The gap is a signal. It is the single most useful thing the thermostat has. It is the thing that tells the box it has something to do. The heater comes on. The room warms. The sensor climbs to 21. The gap closes. The heater goes off. And the box sits there, silent, doing nothing, until the gap opens again. Now, here is a question I want you to actually sit with. Where, physically, is the prediction? It is not a thought. The box is not thinking. There is nobody in there. It is a setting. It is the physical position of a dial. It is a small piece of structure that stands for the statement this room should be 21 degrees. Hold that. Because it matters more than it seems, a prediction does not require a mind. It does not require thought, or experience, or anything we would call awareness. It requires only a bit of structure that a system keeps trying to make true. The thermostat has no brain, no nervous system, nothing whatsoever that we would call experience, and yet it has, plainly, all 3 of our parts are prediction, a way to sense the gap between that prediction and the world, and a way to act to close it. Predict, sense. Act. Say that shape quietly to yourself. A predict, sense, act. And one piece of real history. Because it earns the thermostat its place at the front of this course. In the 1940s, a mathematician named Norbert Wiener sat and studied devices exactly like this one. Simple machines that sense a gap and act to close it, and he realized something that started a whole field. He realized that the loop in the thermostat was the same loop he was finding in the human nervous system, in the way your hand closes on a cup, in the way you hold your balance. He gave the study of that loop a name. Cybernetics, from the Greek for steersman, the person at the tiller of a boat, constantly sensing the gap between where the boat is heading and where it should head, and constantly correcting. That is the thermostat. That is, it turns out, also you, called the shape. We are about to watch it run in something alive. Second, a bird catching a moth in mid-air, the same 3-part shape, but now it is fast, and it is alive, and there is something genuinely at stake. A meal, or going hungry. Look at the diagram. The moth is over here on the right. On that wandering dotted line, moths fly erratically on purpose. The erratic flight is the moth's whole defense. Now look at the bird's flight path. The solid blue arrow. Follow carefully where it points. It does not point at the moth. It points at that dashed circle. Set out ahead of the moth, the predicted intercept, the place the moth is going to be. This is the entire course in a single picture, so let me slow all the way down on it. Suppose the bird did the thing that feels obvious. Suppose it simply aimed straight at the moth, at where the moth visibly is. What happens? In the fraction of a second it takes the bird to cross the gap. The moth has moved, the bird arrives, precisely and uselessly, at the spot the moth has just left, and it does that again, and again, always one beat behind the present, and it starves. A bird that chases the present cannot eat to put a single meal in its mouth. The bird has no choice in it, must aim its whole body at a future that has not happened yet, that is not guaranteed, that it cannot see, and commit its flight to that future. And now the part I most want you to carry out of this room. What happens when the bird's prediction is wrong, when the moth dupes, changes direction halfway? Watch what the bird does. It does not give up, and it does not crash. It adjusts mid-air, mid-wing beat. It re-predicts, re-aims, and it does this several times a second, the entire way in. And here is the point, that correcting is not some separate, cleverer skill bolted on top of the predicting, that correcting is the loop. Predict sends the gap, act, predict again, simply running so fast that, from outside, it looks like one single smooth swoop. The bird is not doing physics. It is not solving differential equations on the wing. It is running the loop, and this is not a bird's trick. It is everywhere. The instant you look, a dog catching a frisbee runs the same interception. It does not chase where the frisbee is. It runs to where the frisbee will be. A baseball outfielder running down a fly ball does the same. Researchers have studied this for decades. It is sometimes called the outfielder problem, and the striking finding is that the outfielder is not computing a trajectory. They are running a simple, continuous loop that keeps a gap closed, step by step, and it delivers them to the right spot. None of these, bird, dog, outfielder, can do the mathematics of the catch. Every one of them can run the loop. The thermostat ran it in metal, once a minute, to hold a room steady. The bird runs it in feathers and hunger, 10 times a second, to stay alive. Third example, and this one is you crossing a busy street. Look at the diagram of 2 cars in motion, and a person stepping off the curb. Here is what I want you to catch yourself doing, because you do it almost every day, and you have almost certainly never once watched yourself do it. You step to the curb. You do not stop and compute. You do not measure the speed of the cars in meters per second. You would not know how. Instead, you predict, and you predict a genuinely startling number of things, all at once. Where will that car be in 2 seconds? Where will the other car be? Where exactly will the curb meet my foot, so that I step down cleanly and do not stumble? How fast must I walk to clear the gap before it closes? Is the cyclist going to pass in front of me, or behind? Half a dozen forecasts, maybe a dozen, all running together, all refreshed with every single step. And here is the strange and important part: almost none of them ever reach your awareness. You experience the entire rich parallel computation as one simple, calm, wordless feeling. I am crossing the street. Now think back to when this was not automatic, to when you first learned to drive a car. Do you remember how exhausting it was? Every mirror check deliberate, every gap judged consciously, slowly, with effort. You came home from an hour's lesson genuinely tired, as if you had done hard physical work, and you had not moved. Why so tired? Because every prediction was being made the slow, expensive, conscious way. And then, months later, something changed. You could drive a familiar route and arrive with almost no memory of the journey. People describe that as the skill becoming automatic, and that is true, but here is what automatic actually means. Underneath it means your predictions about the car and the road had become so reliable, so well tuned, that they no longer needed to be checked consciously. The exhaustion was the cost of unreliable prediction. The ease was the reward of reliable prediction. That is the saying trade, by the way, that you will feel in every skill you have ever learned, and you only ever feel the machinery directly when it fails. You know the lurch. You step off a curb you did not know was there, or you reach what you thought was the bottom of a staircase and there is one more step than your body predicted. Your whole body jolts. Now notice that jolt is not the size of the step. The step is small, an inch, 2 inches. The jolt is enormous. The jolt is not the size of the step. It is the size of the prediction error. The gap between the world your body had predicted and the world it actually got. When the prediction is right, you feel nothing at all. Smooth, calm, automatic. Well, it is wrong. You feel the entire gap, all at once, dumped into your body as a jolt. Hold that. We will come straight back to it in a few minutes. So look at what we have gathered. Metal, feathers, a human being crossing a road, a dumb box on a wall with no mind at all, a bird, and you, with everything you are, 3 things that could not be more different, in their substance, in their speed, in whether there is anyone home inside at all. But before I close this, I owe you the 4th example, the one the slide did not warn you about, because so far every example has been a thing predicting the world outside itself. The 4th thing that predicts is the one closest to home. It is your own body, predicting itself, right now, without any instruction from you. Your brain is predicting your own heartbeat, and that prediction is part of why you do not normally feel your heart pounding away in your chest. A perfectly predicted heartbeat, like the perfectly predicted nose, carries no news. Your brain is predicting your balance. It is running a constant forecast of where your body's weight is, and correcting, which is the entire reason you can stand up without thinking about it. Your brain predicts when you will be hungry and starts the machinery of hunger before the food runs out, not after. It predicts your next breath. The inward-facing senses even have a name, interoestrogen, and we will give them real attention in a later week. For today, just take the headliner. The prediction loop is not only how you handle the world, it is how you hold yourself together. You are not only a predictor of streets and birds and other people, you are, from the inside, a body predicting a body. And now, the synthesis, 4 examples, a thermostat, a bird, a person crossing a road, and a body holding itself together from the inside, 4 things with nothing in common, and every single one of them runs the identical move. It carries a prediction. It checks that prediction against what is actually happening, and it acts on the gap between the two. Predict, sense, act. Predict, sense, act. That is not a metaphor, and it is not a coincidence, and it is not me arranging the examples to flatter the idea. It is the finding. When something persists in this world, well, it holds itself together over time, instead of simply dissolving into its surroundings the way a sandcastle dissolves into the beach, and you look closely inside it. This is the shape you reliably find. A thing that lasts is a thing that predicts. Now I want to show you what is underneath that, and to do it I am going to take the prediction away. I would like to do a thought experiment with you, and you can close your eyes for this one. It genuinely works better. Settle for a second. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, and nothing at all, is as you predicted it would be. Start small, because the small things are the worst. You swing your feet out of bed, and the floor is not quite where your feet expected it, an inch off, and a different inch off every time. You stand, already slightly wrong-footed, and you walk to the bathroom, and the door is heavier than you predicted, so you half stumble through it. You look in the mirror, and the face is yours, but the proportions are subtly, unplaceably wrong, and you cannot say how. You turn the tap, and the water runs upward. You take a mouthful of coffee, and it tastes of salt. You open your own front door, the door you have opened 10,000 times, and it gives onto a room you have never seen in your life. Every small certainty you stand on, all day, without ever once thinking about it, gone, all of it, at once, all morning. Here is my question, and notice that it is deliberately, not how would you feel. That question is too easy. Anyone can answer it. My question is sharper than that. What would break first? Of everything that is you, your body, your mood, your thoughts, your sense of who you even are, what is the very first thing that actually fails? Listen to what almost everyone finds. Almost nobody says the first thing to break would be their body. Your body is fine. It is the same body it always was. Almost everyone reaches, in one wording or another, for the same thing: safety, trust, the feeling that the ground is the ground. And many people say, in some form, I would be exhausted by breakfast, and that answer is exactly right, and it is worth stopping on, because why would you be exhausted? You have not run anywhere. You have not lifted anything. You would be exhausted because every single action that is normally free, standing, walking, lifting a cup, opening a door, has all at once become a problem you must solve consciously, effortfully, slowly, from scratch, every time. It is the learning to drive exhaustion from a few minutes ago, but now it is not just driving. It is everything, all of it, at once, forever. And that mismatch, that wrongness in moment after moment, between the world you predicted and the world you actually got, has a name. And I want to give it to you now, because it is one of the 3 or 4 words this whole course turns on. We call it surprise. Not surprise in the everyday sense of a nice shock on your birthday. Something more precise and more measurable than that. Surprise, for us, is the measure of how far the world departed from what you predicted. A morning where everything lands more or less as predicted has very little surprise in it. The morning I just walked you through has nothing but surprise. It is surprise from the moment your feet miss the floor. And here is the headline finding of week 1. The one sentence I most want you to be able to say back to me. Tonight. In your own words, a surprise is costly. It is exhausting. It is frightening. And a life with too much of it in it is, quite simply, not livable, which means the deepest job of a mind, the reason it bothers to predict at all, is to keep its surprise low. Hold that word, surprise. It is a small, ordinary word today. By week 6 it will have become the single most important quantity in this entire course, and it will have a precise mathematical shape. But the shape will only ever be a way of measuring a thing you felt just now. With your eyes closed, you can also see surprise. By the way, in the small disasters of an ordinary life, you do not need the nightmare version. Seasickness is surprise. Your eyes look at a steady cabin and predict stillness, while your inner ear reports the roll of the sea. And the 2 predictions cannot both be true, and the unresolvable conflict between them is the nausea. Vertigo is surprise, the strange discomfort of a face in a film that is almost human but not quite. The so-called uncanny valley is surprise your face prediction is being violated by a small margin, and the margin feels wrong. Every one of those is a small, local version of the nightmare you just imagined. They are what a few prediction errors feel like. The nightmare is just what all of them, at once, would feel like. And so this is the dividend. This is what prediction has quietly been buying you every ordinary day of your life. It is not buying you accuracy as a kind of trophy. Prediction, when it is working, is buying you the felt sense that the world is safe enough to stop bracing against. It is the reason a room can feel restful. Think honestly about why a familiar room is restful and a strange hotel room, the first night, is not. It is not the furniture. The strange room has perfectly good furniture. It is that in the familiar room, every prediction you make is quietly landing, second after second, and so you are allowed to put your guard down. Think about why jet lag flattens you so completely. It is not only the lost sleep, it is that, for several days, Every prediction your body makes about light and food and time, and when to be tired, is slightly, persistently, gratingly wrong, and living inside 1,000 small unresolved prediction errors is genuinely, measurably depleting. When your predictions are good, the world feels calm and effortless and safe, and you never notice it, not for a moment, in exactly the way you never notice the flaw, right up until the instant the flaw is not there. So how does the loop actually work? That is next. We have the idea fully in our hands now. Let me give it a spine, the one definition this whole course is built on. There is still no mathematics in this. It is a sentence, a picture, and 2 worked examples. Start here. Your prediction and the world will disagree, not occasionally, always, a little. You predicted the coffee at one temperature. It is some other temperature. You predicted the step. It was half an inch lower. There is always a gap, and we have already established the most important thing about that gap. It is not a flaw, and it is not a failure. The gap is the signal. It is the single thing that tells a living system it has something to do. A system with no gap will have nothing to do and no reason to do anything. So a living thing is faced, constantly, every waking second, with a gap between what it predicted and what it is actually getting. And here, finally, is the definition. Faced with that gap, there are exactly 2 things any system can do about it. 2 moves. Only ever 2. Not 3. Not 1, 2. And once you have seen the 2, you have seen the engine of the whole course. Here is the definition. In a single line, organisms keep their predictions and their observations in line by changing the prediction, or by changing the observation. Let me show you both moves on the loop, and then I will walk 2 real examples all the way around it. Look at the diagram. On the left, the agent. That is the thermostat. The bird, the body, you. It holds a prediction. On the right, the world. It produces what actually happens. Regardless of what anyone predicted, 2 arrows run between them. The blue arrow, coming inward from the world to the agent, is observation. That is perception. The gold arrow, going outward from the agent to the world, is action. Now, the 2 moves. Move 1, you change the prediction. New evidence arrives, and instead of insisting on what you expected, you update it. You believed your friend was angry with you. Then you learn they had simply had a brutal day that had nothing to do with you, and you change your mind, and the gap closes. You moved your prediction to meet the world. That updating, that quiet, constant revising, is what perception actually is. And this is worth saying slowly, because it is the exact reversal of the camera model. We started with a perception, is not the passive receiving of a picture. Perception is the active work of updating your prediction to fit what just came in. It is the small loop drawn inside the agent on the diagram. Perception is something you do. Move to change the observation. This time you do not touch your mind at all. This time you reach out along the gold arrow, and you change the world itself, until the world comes to match your prediction. You predicted this room would be warm. It is not. You do not sit there and talk yourself into feeling warm. You stand up and you put the heater on, and you keep it on until the room is the way you predicted it. That is action. Action is closing the very same gap, but from the other side. Instead of moving the prediction to meet the world, you move the world to meet the prediction. Now let me walk 2 examples all the way around this loop, slowly, so that you see the 2 moves working together, because in real life they always do. The first is at night. You are in bed, in a house you believe is empty and quiet, and you hear a sound downstairs. Right now there is a gap. You predicted silence, and you got a sound. Watch what you do, in order. First, you go completely still, and you listen, hard. That is move 1. You are gathering observation, straining to update your prediction. Is it the cat, the house settling as it cools, the wind in the gutter? You were trying to change the prediction to fit the evidence, without having to get up. Now suppose it does not work, the evidence will not resolve. You genuinely cannot tell, so you switch moves. You get up and you turn on the light. That is move 2, an action, a change to the world itself, which changes what you will observe, and forces the gap to close, finally, one way or the other. Perception first, then, when perception alone cannot do it. Action. Here is the second example, and it is an ordinary daytime one. You see a friend across a busy street, and you lift your hand and wave. They do not wave back. There is your gap. You predicted a returned wave, and you got nothing. Watch the two moves arrive in the same order. First, move 1 you repredict. Maybe it is not actually them. Maybe it is them, but they did not see me. Maybe the sun is behind me and I am a silhouette. You are working to change the prediction so the gap closes quietly, without a scene, and if that does not settle it, if you still are not sure, you go to move 2 you act. You call their name across the street. You wave bigger. You change the world, so that the next observation finally resolves the gap. 2 moves, always available, always, when you watch closely in that order, mind first, then world. And that, at last, is why this framework carries the name it carries, active inference. 2 words, and you now genuinely own both of them. Inference, because the agent is forever inferring. It never, ever gets the world handed to it directly. It only ever receives those thin, partial, ambiguous signals coming down the bow arrow, and from them it must infer, reconstruct, guess intelligently at what is really out there. That is move 1. That is perception, active, because the agent does not only sit and infer, it also acts. It reaches out along the gold arrow and changes the world itself, bending the world toward its predictions. That is move 2. That is action, inference and active, perception and action. 1 loop. 2 moves, and you have just met the spine of all 12 weeks of this course. I want to be honest about what comes next, so you can hear it as a promise rather than a threat. Everything from here deepens this picture. Nothing replaces it. Week 6 will put a precise measure on the word surprise. Week 9 will stack these loops into hierarchies. The capstone will build one of these agents in real code. But it is all of it. This loop. If you hold the loop, you can hold the course. A set of confusions to clear, before they have a chance to set. Here is the first, and it is a fair one to land on after an hour like this one, and isn't this just optimism? Isn't your mind predicts basically positive thinking with a diagram attached? No, and the difference genuinely matters, so take hold of it firmly. Prediction is not hope. Prediction is not the expectation that things will go well. Prediction includes, fully and constantly, the prediction of disaster. If you predict the stair is there, and you step out, and it is not, that was a prediction, a confident one. It was simply wrong. Think about a person living with severe anxiety. That mind is not under-predicting. And it is certainly not being optimistic. It is predicting constantly and intensely, threat behind that door, catastrophe in that silence, danger in that tone of voice. That is the prediction machinery running hot, running hard, running without rest. It is the very opposite of optimism, and it is the exact same machine. So when we say a mind is a prediction machine, we are describing the structure, the shape a thing must have in order to persist at all. We are not, anywhere, describing a mood. Keep prediction and optimism in 2 separate boxes, and you will keep your footing all term. The second confusion, and this is the one most worth catching today, because the whole hour has been quietly fighting it. When I say your mind is predicting all day long, you may be picturing conscious forecasting, a little inner voice, deliberately announcing the next moment in words. That is not what I mean, and the gap between those two things is the entire point of this lesson. Almost all of your predicting is unconscious, and almost all of it is bodily. You did not decide to predict where the next stair was. Your legs did. Below any awareness at all, you did not consciously forecast the door handle in the dark. Your arm did. You are not consciously forecasting your own heartbeat, and yet it is being predicted right now. Remember the story circle. You had made 100 predictions before breakfast, and could not name a single one of them, until you were explicitly asked to go looking. Prediction is not a voice in your head. It is something your whole body is doing, ceaselessly, silently, underneath the voice. The third confusion isn't this just the old idea that the brain is a computer, dressed up in new words. Also no. And here the thermostat does the work of proving it for us. We are not saying the brain is a computer. Active inference is what is called a normative principle. And do not worry about that exact phrase yet. We define it carefully in week 5. And I am holding you to nothing on it today. Here is the plain version, for now it is a claim about what anything must do in order to keep existing over time. Mind or no mind, brain or no brain, and the proof that it is not a computer metaphor is the small box on the wall. The thermostat predicts, senses, and acts. It runs the entire loop, and it is not a computer, has no software, and computes nothing. The principle is older and wider than computers, and older and wider than brains. It was not borrowed from our technology. If anything, our technology borrowed it from the principle. And one more, a fourth confusion, and it usually comes as a genuine question. So let me ask it for you. If my mind is predicting all the time, and is as good at it as you say, then why am I ever surprised at all? Why isn't life just seamless? That is an excellent question, and the answer is important. You are surprised because the world genuinely contains novelty. It is not a recording. It has not happened before. It can always do something your model did not see coming, and here is the part worth holding. The mind that was never surprised would not be a perfect mind. It would be a mind that had stopped learning. Surprise is costly, yes. That was the thought experiment. But surprise is also the only teacher you have. Every surprise is the world handing you a correction. The goal is not a life with zero surprise. That would be a life with zero learning. The goal is a mind that meets its surprises and uses them. Old that, it will matter enormously by week 6. Here is how we end, and we will end this same way every single week. It is called a retrieval close, and I will be honest with you about its importance. It is the most valuable 90 seconds of the whole hour, not the examples. This, I am going to ask you to finish one sentence, out loud, in your own words. Not my words. Not the words on any slide. Yours. If your wording comes out different from the way I would say it, that is not a problem. That is the entire point of the exercise. The sentence is the mind is for. You might say a mind is for staying ahead of the world, for not being surprised, for keeping the body safe by guessing what comes next, for filling in what the senses do not give you, for making the world feel safe enough to live in. Every one of those is correct. The wording belongs to you. The idea underneath every version is the same single idea, and the fact that you can say it out loud, with no notes in a sentence you built yourself out of your own words, that is precisely how I know today landed. Not because you heard it from me, because you can say it back as yours. One thing to carry into the week, and it is small. genuinely one sentence of work. Between now and next week I want you to catch yourself in the act. Just once. Catch one prediction your body or your mind made without you, automatically, below your awareness, the way we reconstructed them in the story circle. Except this time catch it live, in real time, as it happens, the lurch at a missing stair, the finch at a sudden sound, the hand going straight to the handle in the dark. When you catch one, write it down, one sentence. That is the entire assignment. Bring that one sentence back next week. It is, quite literally, where week 2 begins. 2 last things, and then I will let you go. First, there is a short recap video, 2 or 3 minutes, waiting on your week 1 page in the portal. Everything we did this hour. Condensed. Watch it once this week, with the sound on. Not to learn it again. You have already learned it. But to let it settle, the way a second look at a map settles a route you have already walked, and second, a look ahead, so that you leave with the next question already alive in you. Today we established that a mind predicts. Next week we sharpen it, because if a mind is busy predicting what? Exactly. What is the raw material it is actually working from? And the answer is going to be genuinely unsettling. In the best way the world hands your mind far, far less than it feels like it does. You are working from a signal far thinner, far more ambiguous, far more full of holes than your seamless experience would ever suggest. What your mind does with that thin and broken signal, how it builds a whole, stable, livable world out of almost nothing. That is the entire subject of week 2. That is week 1. One sentence. And it belongs to you now. Our mind is not for seeing the world. It is for predicting it. Thank you. Genuinely. I will see you next week.